Willow Fairbanks knew two things for sure. She hated crowded parties, and she hated them even more when she wasn't allowed to leave. The rooftop of the Manhattan high-rise was packed shoulder to shoulder with people who looked like they belonged in a magazine ad. Perfect hair, designer dresses, fake laughs echoing under string lights. Willow stood near the glass railing, gripping a tray of champagne flutes tighter than she needed to. The black slacks and crisp white shirt marked her as staff, not guest, though she doubted anyone cared to notice. Except one man did. He wasn't flashy like the others. No loud suit, no obvious watch flashing diamonds. Just a black button-down rolled at the sleeves, dark jeans, and a look in his eyes that said he wanted to be anywhere but here. He'd been pacing near the bar for the last 15 minutes, dodging conversations and declining drinks like his life depended on it. Then his eyes met hers. "Hey," he said quietly, stepping toward her like he was afraid someone might see. "You know a way out of here?" Willow blinked. "You mean like out?" "Exactly," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I'm supposed to be networking, but I'm about 2 minutes away from losing it." She looked at him, really looked. There was something off. Not drunk, not stoned. Just tired. Like the noise was too loud for him. Like he was pretending to be someone he wasn't. "Emergency exits through the kitchen," she said, lowering her voice. "But if you trip the alarm, you'll have 10 security guys on you before you hit the sidewalk." His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You always this helpful to strangers?" "I'm not usually cornered by someone who looks 5 seconds from breaking into a sprint." He hesitated. "If I asked you to walk me out, would that get you fired?" Willow paused. She'd never broken protocol. Not once. But something about the man, the way he quietly asked instead of demanded, made her curious. And reckless. "I've got 10 minutes left on my shift," she said. "Stay out of sight and follow me." He didn't thank her. Just nodded once, eyes steady. Like she'd just given him something more valuable than air. She weaved through the service hallway past the kitchen where the chefs yelled in French and the line cooks didn't look up. She ducked through a side door that opened to the staff stairwell, holding it open behind her. He followed, silent. 2 flights down and 1 narrow hallway later, they stepped out into the service alley behind the building. The noise disappeared. The city buzzed, but it was distant, muted. The man leaned against the brick wall, closing his eyes for a second like he could finally breathe. Willow crossed her arms. "You're not going to tell me your name, are you?" He opened his eyes slowly. "Zane." "Zane what?" He tilted his head. "Just Zane." She gave him a look. He gave a small shrug. "Let's pretend I'm just a guy who needed air." Willow laughed under her breath. "You're a weird one." "You helped me breathe," he said, suddenly serious. "That makes you rare." The words hit harder than she expected. She waved it off with a scoff. "You're lucky I didn't report you to the manager." He looked at her again like he was seeing something she didn't know was visible. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Willow." "Willow," he repeated as if testing how her name tasted. "Thanks for saving me." She raised an eyebrow. "You owe me now." "I do," he said. "Let me buy you a coffee." "What part of I'm on shift did you miss?" "Okay," he said, pushing off the wall. "Then tomorrow. I'll be here. Same time. You assume I want to see you again." He just gave her a look, calm and sure. "You will." And then he was gone, walking down the alley with his hands in his pockets like he didn't just climb out of Manhattan society's version of a Shark Tank. Willow rolled her eyes and went back inside, brushing off the strange flutter in her chest. He wasn't coming back. Except he did. The next night, same time, same alley. He was leaning against the wall again, hands tucked into his jacket, waiting like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're persistent," she said as she approached. "I told you I owed you. You didn't say you'd stalk me over it." He smiled, just a little. "Coffee?" She should have said no. But something about him, his quiet confidence, the way he looked at her like she wasn't just background noise, got under her skin. "Fine," she said. He didn't take her to some fancy place. Just a quiet little shop 3 blocks down with a flickering sign and chipped mugs. They sat in the corner booth, and for once Willow didn't feel like she was performing. She didn't have to smile when she didn't want to. She didn't have to pretend. They talked for nearly 2 hours. She learned he liked silence more than noise. That he hated small talk. that he read old books and walked instead of taking cars. He learned she worked 3 jobs, that she wanted to open her own bakery someday, that she didn't believe in fairy tales, not anymore. He didn't flirt. Not really. But there was something in the way he listened that made her feel like she mattered. When they stepped out into the street again, he asked, "Same time tomorrow?" Willow hesitated, then nodded. "You're not like I expected." "What did you expect?" "Arrogant. Fake. Entitled." He grinned. "I'm working on all 3. She laughed, then walked away before she could say something stupid. And so it started. Every night for the next week, he met her. Never missed a day. Always the same alley, the same quiet smile. He never pushed, never asked for more than she was ready to give. But he was there, always there. And Willow started to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. She didn't know who he really was. He never said his last name, never mentioned what he did, never bragged or showed off. Just listened, talked, made her feel like she wasn't invisible. Until one night, it all exploded. She was walking through Midtown, off early from her shift when she turned the corner and saw it. Zane. In a suit. On a massive billboard. Zane Montgomery, tech investor and CEO of Montgomery Ventures, worth over $70 million. Her stomach dropped. She stared at the ad, blinking. No, that couldn't be him. Except it was. Same eyes. Same jaw. Same man who met her in a back alley and drank cheap coffee without flinching. Willow felt her chest tighten. He lied. He lied about everything. The next night, she didn't show up. And for the first time in 7 nights, Zane waited alone. He had no idea what was coming next. Willow didn't leave her apartment for 2 days. The billboard haunted her. Every time she closed her eyes, it flashed behind her eyelids with brutal clarity. Zane Montgomery, standing polished and powerful above the city like he owned it. Because he did. At least part of it. She couldn't reconcile the man from the photo with the one who sipped bitter coffee across from her and listened when she talked about her mother's old recipes. That man had worn in sneakers. That man had never once mentioned money. And yet he'd lied by omission. Every single night. On the 3rd evening, she called out of work. Not because she was sick, but because she knew he'd be there again, in the alley behind the building, waiting like he always did. She wasn't ready to face him. Not with her chest still knotted and her trust hanging by a thread. By the 4th day, she decided to confront him. Avoiding him wasn't making the ache go away. It was making it worse. She needed answers. Willow walked to the alley just before her shift ended, heart pounding hard enough to make her ears hum. He was there, leaning against the wall like nothing in the world had changed except everything had. His eyes flicked up when he saw her, relief washing over his features in an instant. But it didn't last long. Not when he saw her face. "You found out," he said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "You think." He straightened, pushing off the wall. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After another week of pretending to be someone you're not." "I never pretended to be someone else," he said. "I just didn't tell you everything. That's the definition of pretending." He didn't argue, which somehow made it worse. His silence filled the space between them like a wall. "I don't get it," she said. "Why hide it? Why come back here night after night like you were normal?" "Because I wanted to be," he said, voice low. "You're the first person who didn't look at me like I was a bank account. You didn't flinch when I didn't offer you anything. I didn't want to ruin that." Willow folded her arms. "You think lying is better than ruining something?" "I wasn't lying. You weren't telling the truth." Zane stepped closer but didn't reach for her. "I wasn't sure you'd keep coming back if you knew. And you were right." That landed hard. He inhaled sharply but didn't speak. His eyes held hers, full of regret that didn't soften her. "I don't do secrets," she said. "I don't have time for people who think honesty is optional." "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." She turned to leave. "I have dinners I don't want to go to. Fundraisers I didn't ask to be invited to. People who smile at me because they want something. But you." He paused. "You didn't want anything from me." Willow stopped walking but didn't turn. "I didn't want to break it," he said. "So I kept it small. Simple. Just coffee and you." She looked back at him. You already broke it. That night, she didn't go back to the coffee shop. She walked alone, eyes on the sidewalk, trying to ignore how empty the city felt without him by her side. Days passed. Her phone rang more than once from an unknown number. She didn't answer. A bouquet of white peonies showed up at her building with a note she didn't open. She left them in the lobby. She didn't want flowers. She wanted truth. On the 6th night, she walked into her usual shift and found chaos in the back hallway. The manager, red-faced and breathless, was waving his hands at the staff. Clear the East Wing, he barked. We've got a private reservation in the gallery room. Willow barely had time to hang up her coat before someone shoved a tray into her hands and told her to cover the head table. When she walked into the room, her heart dropped. Zane was there. Not in jeans, not leaning against a wall, but in a tailored charcoal suit, seated at the head of a long table surrounded by executives in designer clothes and expensive watches. He didn't see her at first. She kept her head down, keeping her steps measured as she laid out new glasses. When she reached him, he turned and froze. Their eyes met. Willow's breath caught. He stood up slowly, saying something to the man beside him before stepping away from the table. Excuse me, he said to the manager behind her, voice calm but firm. Can I speak with your staff member for a moment? The manager's mouth opened, but Zane was already leading her toward the adjoining room, away from the guests. She followed, stunned silent until the door clicked shut behind them. What are you doing here? She demanded. I booked this room. You think throwing your money around is going to fix what you did? No, he said, but it's the only way I could get you to look at me again. Willow stepped back. This isn't a game. I know it's not. I've never been less interested in playing games. Then why keep showing up like it's supposed to mean something? Because it does, he said. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Not once. Not through meetings or phone calls or the 3 different speeches I've had to give this week. You're in my head, Willow. Her chest tightened. You don't get to say that. Not after lying. I didn't come to you as Zane Montgomery. I came as someone who couldn't breathe. You gave me air. That wasn't a lie. She hesitated, the fight in her chest twisting into something less certain. Come with me, he said. Just for an hour. No suits. No noise. Just us. Willow stared at him. Why would I trust you again? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper. Not a check. Not a glossy invitation. Just a handwritten list. She took it, frowning. It was a list of bakeries. Half of them in Brooklyn. One circled in red ink. What is this? I've been looking for a space, he said. For you. Her eyes snapped up. What? You said you wanted to open your own bakery. I found a spot. It needs work, but it's got potential. You don't owe me anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I believe in it. In you. She stared at the paper. I'm not trying to buy you, he added. I'm trying to show you what it looks like when someone listens. Willow folded the paper and tucked it into her apron. She didn't speak, just walked past him and back into the chaos of the dining room. Zane didn't follow. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the silverware had been counted twice, her manager handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence written in neat handwriting. I'm still waiting in the alley. She hesitated. Then she ran. When she reached the alley, he was standing where he always had, hands tucked into his coat pockets, shoulders tense like hope was too heavy to carry. Willow stopped in front of him. You still owe me coffee, she said. His breath caught. She stepped closer. But this time, I picked the place. Zane nodded, eyes never leaving hers. Anywhere. And for the first time in days, her chest didn't feel heavy. The ache didn't press so hard. Because he was here. And he was trying. She could work with that. Willow didn't expect the private driver waiting outside her building the next morning. She stood on the curb, arms folded, glaring at the sleek black car like it had personally insulted her. The driver stepped out, offered her a polite nod, then opened the door without a word. Inside, tucked into the leather seat, was a small card with her name written in deep blue ink. Just a place I thought you'd like. Zane. She should have walked away. She should have turned around and gone back upstairs to her tiny walk-up and her second-hand coffee machine. But her fingers closed around the note before she could stop them, and her feet moved forward like they had a mind of their own. The car pulled away from the curb, and Willow watched the city blur past the tinted windows. She didn't know where they were going, but she wasn't afraid. Not exactly, just unsure. When the car rolled to a stop, she blinked at the building in front of her. It was quiet, modest on the outside, not flashy like she expected from someone with Zane's last name. A small wooden sign hung over the door, Harper's. The windows were clean but unassuming, and the pale bricks looked like they'd been there for decades. Willow stepped inside. What greeted her wasn't a showroom or a luxury trap. It was warmth. Real warmth. The scent of cinnamon and orange peel filled the air, and every surface gleamed with care, not wealth. It wasn't open to the public yet, she could tell. There were no customers, no cash register ringing. Just a long oak counter, an empty pastry case, and rows of hanging copper pans that caught the soft morning light. She turned as the back door creaked open. Zane stepped out, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting his forearm. "You baked?" she asked, stunned. "I tried," he said, lifting a tray of slightly uneven croissants. "They're terrible." She stared. "You brought me to a pastry graveyard?" He set the tray down and grinned. "I thought you'd want to see the space. It used to be a bakery. My assistant tracked down the permit records 30 years ago. It was run by a couple who lived upstairs. The place has been empty since last fall." Willow walked slowly toward the counter, her fingers grazing the edge. "You rented this?" "I bought it." He leaned against the wall behind her, watching her closely. "I had no idea what I was looking for until I met you. Then it was like, all I could think about was this." She turned, unsure how to process the weight of that. "You don't even know me." Zane's eyes didn't waver. "I know you don't waste words. I know you carry too much on your shoulders and tell no one about it. I know you talk about recipes like they're memories, not instructions. And I know that when I'm around you, I don't feel like I'm drowning." Her throat tightened. He stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to forgive me or trust me. I just want you to know this is real. You're not a distraction. You're the first thing that's felt solid in years." Willow exhaled slowly. "You're not who I thought you were. I'm not who I thought I was either." She looked around the room again. It was old, imperfect, but it had foundation, character, a heartbeat beneath the dust. Zane moved to the counter and unwrapped a bundle of parchment paper, revealing a set of recipe cards. They were worn, corners curled, smudged with time. "I found these upstairs," he said. "They belong to the original owner's wife. There's a note on the back of one says she used to bake through the night when she couldn't sleep." Willow picked up the top card. Cherry almond tart. Her mother had made something similar before she passed. Zane didn't say anything. He just stood there, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. And in that quiet, something shifted. "You really bought this place?" she asked. He nodded. "And you want me to run it?" "I want you to own it. I'll help you get it off the ground, but it's yours. Completely. No strings." She narrowed her eyes. "There's always strings. Not this time. You don't even care about bakeries. I care about you." The words hung in the air, heavy and terrifying. She wanted to fight them, to question every syllable. But instead, she looked around again. This space, it wasn't a gesture. It was the beginning. She ran her hand over the counter again. "I'd want to paint the ceilings and gut the back kitchen. I figured. And I don't want to be anyone's charity case." "You're not." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll think about it." Zane's mouth curved, but he didn't push. "I'll wait." Willow walked toward the door, then paused. "You're not what I expected either." He gave a small laugh. "Is that a good thing?" "I haven't decided yet." She left before he could answer. The next week passed in a blur. She visited the space again, and again. Each time Zane was there, but he never hovered. He let her take notes, measure the walls, sketch out possibilities in her worn notebook. He brought coffee, sometimes food, but never pressure. He spoke less, listened more. One afternoon, he showed her a permit application already in process under her name. "Just in case you say yes," he said. She didn't say yes. Not yet. But she didn't say no either. Then came the gala. She didn't want to go. But the invitation arrived in a white envelope with her name embossed in gold. Zane hadn't mentioned it, but she recognized his assistant's handwriting on the RSVP card. She stood in front of the mirror in her tiny apartment for a full hour before pulling on the midnight blue gown she'd borrowed from a friend at the restaurant. It was the only thing she owned that didn't smell like flour. When she arrived, the doorman opened the glass doors to reveal a ballroom that shimmered with chandeliers and polished marble. Music floated from a live quartet, and the air buzzed with the perfume of wealth. Willow felt wildly out of place. Until she saw him. Zane stood near the center of the room, flanked by executives and socialites, but his eyes were scanning the crowd like he was searching for a lifeline. The moment they landed on her, everything else seemed to fall away. He crossed the room in long, purposeful strides. "You came," he said. "You invited me. I didn't think you'd say yes." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not the only one who can surprise people." He looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. "You're breathtaking. I'm borrowing the dress." "I wasn't talking about the dress." Willow swallowed hard. "This is your world." "No," he said. "This is the world I have to survive. You're the one I choose." He reached for her hand. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she let someone hold it. The night passed in a blur of music, dancing, and whispered moments tucked between glittering distractions. He didn't leave her side once. As the gala wound down, he leaned in close. "Come with me." She hesitated. "Where?" He didn't answer, just led her through a side exit, down a private hall, and onto a rooftop bathed in soft gold light. A single table waited, set for two, surrounded by candles flickering against the skyline. Willow stared. "You did all this? I wanted one night you'd never forget." She turned slowly to face him. "I believe in you," Zane said. "Not just in your dream, in who you are. Every part." Her heart beat wildly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "No," she whispered, panic rising. "It's not what you think," he said, opening it. Inside was a single silver key. "To the bakery," he said. "Not a proposal. Just a beginning." She stared at it. "I want to build something with you," he continued. "Whatever pace you need, whatever shape it takes. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give." Willow reached out slowly and closed the box. Then she stepped forward, placed a hand at his chest, and kissed him. Not quick, not cautious, but full like fire meeting oxygen. When she pulled back, her voice was quiet. "Okay, let's build something." And Zane, for the first time in years, felt whole. Willow stood at the center of the bakery, breathing in the scent of freshly sanded wood and lemon oil. Morning light poured through the windows, casting soft gold over the newly painted walls and the gleaming countertops she'd chosen herself. The space no longer felt like a memory waiting to collapse, it felt like hers. Not just a building, but the beginning of everything she hadn't dared to believe she could have. She reached for the stack of invoices and supply lists she'd left on the counter, flipping through them with steady fingers. It was opening week. There were still decisions to make, staff to finalize, signage to approve, and the menu to tweak, but for the first time in years, the chaos didn't feel like survival. It felt like momentum. Behind her, the door creaked open. "You're early," she said without turning. Zane's voice followed, low and warm. "You always say that like it's a surprise. I figured you'd be buried in meetings. I canceled them." She glanced over her shoulder. He was holding 2 coffees, hers with cinnamon and oat milk, just how she liked it, and a pastry wrapped in parchment. "What's that?" "I tried baking again." Willow narrowed her eyes. "You didn't." He offered the bundle with a cautious look. "I followed your instructions this time." She opened the paper and blinked. This actually looks edible. I watched a video on laminating dough. 3 times. She broke off a piece and took a bite. It's not bad. I'll take that as a win. Willow leaned against the counter, chewing thoughtfully. You sure you won't regret trading boardrooms and billion-dollar deals for this? Zane set his coffee down beside hers. I didn't trade anything. I chose something better. She tilted her head. You're not just saying that to charm me? No, he said softly. I've said a lot of things to a lot of people, most of them to keep up appearances. But you're the only one I've ever meant every word with. Willow took a slow sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch. You know, when I met you, I thought you were just another bored rich guy pretending to slum it for the night. Zane gave a quiet laugh. And now, I still think you're a little too polished for your own good. But I also think you're honest. And possibly insane for letting me run a business with your money. He stepped closer. It's not about the money. It never was. Then what is it about? You. She stared at him, heart pounding in a rhythm she was still learning to trust. You sure? I've never been more certain of anything in my life. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, Willow turned back to the counter, picked up a pen, and circled a name on the staffing list. We still need someone to run the register. I'll do it. She looked at him. You're serious? I already ordered custom aprons. I figured I'd look good in one. Willow laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Fine. But if you mess up the cash drawer, I'm docking your imaginary paycheck. Deal. The next few days passed in a blur of flour, laughter, and unexpected moments of quiet intimacy. Zane didn't hover, but he was everywhere painting trim, assembling stools, helping carry in deliveries. He never flinched at the long hours or the messes. When the ovens broke down, he called in a repair team within the hour. When the first test batch of scones burned, he stayed up with her until 2 in the morning, helping her remake them from scratch. Their rhythm was easy, natural. Willow had never believed in perfect, but this came close. On the morning of the soft launch, the line outside the bakery wrapped around the corner. Willow peeked through the curtains, panic creeping into her voice. That can't be real. Zane joined her at the window. It's real. We're not ready. You are. She pulled back, pacing. What if the coffee machine fails? What if the croissants are dry? What if nobody comes back? Zane reached for her hand. Then we fix it. Together. She wanted to believe him. And when she looked into his eyes steadfast and steady, she did. The doors opened at 9. By 10, they were sold out of scones. By noon, people were asking for her by name. Zane worked the register like he'd done it all his life, charming regulars and memorizing orders. Willow moved between the kitchen and the front counter, apron dusted with flour, cheeks flushed with heat and adrenaline. It was chaos. It was overwhelming. It was everything she'd dreamed. That night, after the last customer left and the lights dimmed, she collapsed onto the bench seat near the window, shoes kicked off, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. Zane slid in beside her, 2 mugs in hand. I saved the last 2 cups of decaf, he said. She took the mug with a grateful sigh. I can't feel my feet. But you did it. We did it. She glanced at him. You were good today. I only dropped 1 coffee. You also gave someone exact change in Canadian dollars. Still counts as currency. Willow leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you. For what? For not running the first time it got hard. Zane turned his face toward hers. I didn't come here to run. I came here to stay. She didn't reply, not with words. Instead, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the silver key he'd given her weeks ago. She set it in his hand. It's yours too now, she said. You didn't just give me a bakery. You helped me find a life I didn't think I could have. He closed his fingers around the key, jaw tight. I want all of it, Willow. The bakery. The mornings. The hard days. You. Her breath caught. I don't care if it's messy or unpredictable. I want a life where I wake up and you're the first person I see. Willow stared at him, unsure if she could trust what she was hearing. He reached into his coat and brought out a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. He opened it. Inside, nestled in black silk, was a delicate ring, a single emerald-cut diamond set in a thin platinum band. I'm not asking for perfect, he said. I'm asking for real. For every morning after this one. Marry me. She blinked fast, hands trembling. If you're proposing because you think I need saving, I'm proposing because I love you, he interrupted. And if I have to spend the rest of my life proving it, I will. Willow looked at the ring, then at him, and nodded. Zane let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. She took the ring and slid it onto her own finger. No big speeches. No diamond-studded bands. Just you and me. That's all I've ever wanted. They didn't need fireworks. They didn't need a ballroom. They had flour on their sleeves and exhaustion in their bones. But they also had peace, the kind that came from knowing they were building something real together. As the city moved outside their window, Willow leaned into him and whispered, "You found what you were looking for." Zane kissed the top of her head. "I found you." The scent of cinnamon braided buns filled the bakery's walls long before the sun had fully risen. Willow stood at the large prep table in the back kitchen, sleeves rolled to her elbows, her hair tied back in a loose knot. She was glazing the last of the morning pastries when Zane walked in, still drying his hands from the sink, his tie slung around his neck like an afterthought. "You're not wearing that," she said without looking up. He leaned against the doorframe. "It's a public meeting. The city's development board. They expect a tie." Willow reached into the nearest drawer, pulled out a navy apron embroidered with the bakery's name, and held it up. "They can expect whatever they want. You're representing us now, not a hedge fund." Zane took the apron, half laughing, but there was a quiet seriousness in his eyes as he tied it over his dress shirt. "You know they're going to ask about the building next door. They always do." He stepped closer, brushing flour off her cheek with the back of his hand. "You sure you don't want to expand?" Willow shook her head. "It's not about size. It's about soul. We've got what we need right here." Zane studied her for a beat, then nodded. "Then I'll tell them no." She leaned up on her toes and kissed the corner of his mouth. "Tell them no with a smile. You're scarier that way." He grinned, not the polished, media-trained kind, but the one that only ever belonged to her, and left through the back, the bell above the service door jingling once. The day passed in a comfortable rhythm. Customers filtered in and out, many by name now. Willow's assistant, a sharp-eyed pastry prodigy named Clara, handled the ovens while Willow tested a new almond crust in the prep kitchen. She'd been thinking about adding a rotating seasonal tart to the menu, something just for the locals, something that felt like home. By late afternoon, she was elbow-deep in a bag of slivered pistachios when the front door swung open harder than usual. Clara's head popped in from the front. "Willow? You've got company." Willow wiped her hands and stepped into the front, blinking as she saw Zane standing just inside the door, his jacket off, sleeves rolled, tie nowhere in sight. "You're back early," she said. He walked toward her, something unreadable in his expression. "What happened?" she asked. "They offered me the building," he said. "Next door. Said I could have it for half the market rate if I promised to turn it into a chain." Willow's stomach dropped. "And I turned them down." She exhaled. "Good. They didn't take it well." One guy laughed. "Said I was throwing away a gold mine." "What did you say?" Zane's gaze didn't waver. "I said I already found what's priceless." Willow didn't answer. Couldn't. Her heart ached in a way that had nothing to do with pain. He reached for her hand, warm and flour-dusted. "They don't get it. They never will. But it doesn't matter. Because this..." He looked around the sunlit bakery, at the customers laughing softly at the far tables, at the staff working behind the counter. "This is already everything." She stepped closer. "You know you don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to me. I'm not proving anything. I'm living the life I want." With you. Their foreheads touched, and for a long moment, the world narrowed to just their breath, their closeness, the soft thrum of belonging. That evening, they locked up late. Willow turned off the lights while Zane carried the last crate of washed baking trays into the back. The city was quieter now, the streets outside still damp from a short spring rain. They stood in the doorway, watching the reflection of the neon sign flicker on the sidewalk. "Do you ever miss it?" Willow asked softly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the city. "Miss what?" "The other life. Power meetings. $1 billion decisions." He slid an arm around her waist. "I traded a kingdom for a kitchen and never looked back." She laughed under her breath. "You're ridiculous. I'm yours." She looked up at him, the streetlight catching the glint of the engagement ring still snug on her finger. "That's the only thing I want you to be." They didn't go home right away. Instead, they climbed the narrow stairs above the bakery to the small apartment they'd started renovating slowly, piece by piece. The place was still rough in spots, an exposed pipe here, a cracked tile there, but the walls were painted a soft cream now, and the old wood floors glowed with polish. There were flowers in jars on the windowsills and books stacked too deep on the nightstand. Their life was unfolding in layers, simple, imperfect, and entirely theirs. That night, lying in bed with Zane's arm around her and the hum of the city outside their open window, Willow stared up at the ceiling and said, "I want to name the tart after her." Zane's voice was sleepy. "Her? The woman who baked here before me. I've been using her crust recipe. It's still the best I've ever tasted." He kissed her temple. Then it settled. They fell asleep like that, tangled in sheets that still smelled faintly of lavender detergent and sunlight, their breathing slow and matched. Weeks passed. The bakery's official grand opening drew a crowd bigger than they'd expected. Local press showed up, as did food bloggers, old neighbors, and even a few wide-eyed tourists who'd read about the place online. Willow wore a powder blue dress with flower on the hem, and Zane wore his apron like a badge of honor. They didn't make speeches. Instead, they handed out samples. Willow stood behind the counter with Clara, watching kids with chocolate on their cheeks and couples sharing bites of lemon tart. Zane was helping an elderly woman carry a box of pastries to her car. Clara nudged her. "He's either the most useful billionaire I've ever met or the worst one." Willow smiled. "He's the only one who matters." Later that night, they closed the doors together and stood in the quiet again. The bakery was theirs. The life was theirs. No more secrets. No more pretending. Just the truth, messy and beautiful and shared. Zane turned the key in the lock, then turned to her. "You know, I never expected to fall in love in an alley behind a building full of people I never liked." Willow laughed. "And I never expected to fall for the man who couldn't make a decent croissant. I've improved. A little." He pulled her into his arms, their bodies fitting together like they'd always been meant to. "This is it, isn't it?" She nodded against his chest. "Everything I never thought I could have. Everything I didn't let myself want. You deserve all of it. So do you." They didn't say anything else. They just stood there, wrapped in each other, the future wide open and waiting. A year later, the bakery had doubled its staff and added a weekend class series. Willow taught the tart recipe every third Saturday. Customers brought their kids. Zane managed the books and the community partnerships, always in an apron, always with flour on his shoes. They didn't rush the wedding. They didn't need it to prove anything. Every day together was already a vow in action. They lived above the bakery in their cozy, light-filled apartment. They argued over tea blends and paint samples, over who forgot to water the herbs on the fire escape. They made up by slow dancing barefoot in the kitchen and kissing in the middle of grocery store aisles. They built a life, the kind that didn't need spotlights or headlines. Just two people who chose each other again and again in a world that too often forgot how to choose anything real. And every morning, when Zane brought her coffee and Willow smiled sleepily over the rim of her mug, he was reminded of the day she gave him air, and how she never stopped giving it.